If you spend enough time digging through old agricultural texts, monastery garden manuals, or the remnants of medieval herb plots across Europe and Asia, a pattern begins to emerge. Certain herbs weren't grown for flavour or medicine alone. Some were deliberately cultivated because they fundamentally transformed the soil around them. They strengthened neighbouring plants, boosted root development, and pushed harvest yields higher than what the soil should have been capable of. One of these herbs quietly disappeared from mainstream gardening as industrial fertilizers took over, yet it still shows up in the gardens of old countryside families who never abandoned traditional wisdom. That herb is yarrow, a rugged ancient plant that was once considered essential for both soil vitality and plant resilience. Before we dive into the practical steps, let the opening minute anchor this idea. When archaeologists examine pre-industrial garden sites, they often find stands of yarrow growing exactly where vegetable beds used to be. They weren't ornamental. They weren't there by accident. They were deliberately planted because early farmers understood something we've forgotten. A functioning garden isn't made only of crops. It needs support plants that strengthen the entire system. The reason yarrow boosts plant growth is because its roots act like nutrient pumps. Yarrow has a deep-rooting strategy that allows it to reach minerals far below the layer where vegetables typically feed. As those roots pull nutrients from the subsoil, the plant stores them in its leaves and stems. When those leaves eventually shed or are cut down and dropped as mulch, the nutrients are released back into the topsoil in a form plants can easily use. This is why historic cottage gardens treated yarrow as a soil activator. It didn't just sit there looking pretty, it improved the land around it. Farmers in northern Europe once planted it at the edges of poor fields to slowly reclaim depleted soil. Traditional Chinese agricultural texts mention its ability to draw strength from the earth, a phrase that describes perfectly what modern soil science now confirms. The plant produces natural growth-stimulating compounds that influence nearby crops. Beyond its nutrient cycling, yarrow releases biochemical compounds through its roots that enhance microbial activity. Healthy soil isn't just minerals. It's a living ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and microfauna. Yarrow fuels that ecosystem. This was well known among early herbalists who observed that vegetables planted near yarrow seemed more vigorous. They didn't have the vocabulary for microbial interactions, but they saw results. Today we know yarrow roots support beneficial fungi that interact directly with vegetable roots, improving nutrient uptake and overall resilience. Gardeners who add yarrow often notice that their tomatoes, peppers, leafy greens and even fruit shrubs develop richer colour and better structure. The easiest way to apply this forgotten herb is to grow it as a companion plant. To replicate what early farmers did, you don't need complicated methods. Plant yarrow in dedicated clusters around the garden perimeter or tuck smaller varieties between crop rows. Over time, the root systems spread just enough to influence the soil biome without becoming invasive. If your soil is, weak, compacted, or low in organic matter, yarrow's roots break it open naturally. And if you struggle with plants that never seem to take off, yarrow provides the missing microbial spark. A practical example is establishing a yarrow patch in each corner of a garden bed. As the plants mature, Their nutrient-rich leaves can be clipped and laid directly around crops as a mulch. This was a common practice in Old English gardens, especially during the summer months when vegetables needed steady nourishment, but manure wasn't available. The leaves break down rapidly and provide a mild, steady feed while protecting the soil surface. You can also convert yarrow into a potent liquid fertilizer using traditional methods. Historic gardeners didn't rely solely on the plant's physical presence. They brewed what was essentially a fermented yarrow extract. The process is straightforward and still highly effective. Cut a handful of fresh yarrow, place it in a bucket with water, and leave it to steep for several days in the sun. The water darkens and develops a strong herbal scent. This liquid was traditionally used to water struggling plants or seedlings that needed a boost. The minerals and plant compounds dissolve into the water, creating a tonic that fuels early root development. This method works especially well for crops like beans, cucumbers, and tomatoes. A gardener can prepare small batches throughout the growing season and apply the water directly to the base of the plants. Even 1 or 2 treatments show noticeable improvements in vigor and uniformity. The most overlooked benefit of adding yarrow is its ability to stabilize the entire garden ecosystem. Ancient farming systems weren't based on single-species beds. They relied on supportive allies like yarrow to maintain balance. The plant attracts beneficial insects that protect crops from pests. It withstands drought and heat, acting as a marker for environmental stress long before delicate vegetables suffer. It grows in poor soil where almost nothing else thrives, giving homesteaders a reliable tool to rehabilitate damaged land. Modern fertilizers offer quick surges of nitrogen, but they don't fix soil structure or long-term nutrient cycling. Yarrow does. When you integrate this herb into your garden, you are tapping into a deep agricultural tradition that predates industrial farming by centuries. You are restoring the natural partnerships between plants that kept old-world gardens thriving without synthetic inputs. The growth boost is real, and once the plant establishes itself, the effects compound every season. This is why old garden sites still show stronger fertility where yarrow once grew, even after decades of abandonment. If you want more forgotten soil builders, ancient gardening strategies, and survival-grade plant allies that outperform many modern methods, make sure you subscribe to Haven. Share this guide with someone who wants to grow not just plants, but a living, thriving ecosystem built on time-tested knowledge.